Hello there and welcome to Laurence Plays Factorio Planetary Pioneers. I've been saying for a while how we've got over 30 science packs to play with, and so it's time to take a look at some of them and how they're all being built on the nice shiny new city block system down on Norvis. So let's get started off by looking at a nice simple one over here, the wood science. So these are nice and easy, they are just bricks and wooden gears. We can make them on Norvis, so we're not making them on Lignumis anymore because there's no point. So yeah, this is just the same sort of system as we've seen before. We bring in bricks, we bring in wooden gears, we output wooden science. Lovely. This is once again spec'd at 1.5 per second, which means it takes a very, very long time to build up to a train's worth, but that doesn't actually matter at the moment. It's also a bit of ridiculous use of an entire city block, but never mind, that's how city blocks tend to work. Next up is red science, very, very similar, bringing in copper plate and iron gears this time, making a small number of machines, making, again, the 1.5 a second red sciences, and passing them down to a train station down here. Logistics science packs, better known as green science packs, are a little bit more interesting because they require a lot more stuff to go into them. So a logistics science pack is made from a transport belt and an inserter, but because we have Lignumis, well, a belt is made out of a wooden belt and a few other bits and pieces, and an inserter is made out of a wooden inserter and some other bits and pieces. And so that makes things a little bit more complicated and is why we have a few more belts running around here and why we suddenly needed a lot more inputs. And this is where the multiple drop station functionality of LTN comes in very, very handy. So you can see down here, for example, this one is actually working. We have lumber and wooden gears and iron gears being brought in. And because we're not bringing in 8 mixed trains with one thing in each wagon, we are bringing in a full train of each one of these at a time, and conveniently a wagon is about the same size as a steel chest, so that works quite nicely. And so because of that, we need to be able to unload all of the things from all of the wagons. So along here you can see that we've got 2 inserters doing each product all the way down here. That means the unloading does take, well, 3 times as long as it would if there's only a single resource being unloaded, but other than that, this works very nicely. And there is enough storage space here to have a decent amount of left over and then bring in an entire train load. So we can, yes, we can have that, then unloading onto all these belts, as you can see here. That then gets passed up, then it's being merged here, and that did require a bit of spaghetti in order to get all 3 different types merged onto 1 or 2 belts coming out. But then we've managed to get the relevant things all being fed out to where they need to go. So here we've got, for example, we've got the lumber and the wooden gear wheels being fed in order to make these inserters, which are then being passed up to make these inserters, and I've got an additional inserter bringing in the iron gears and presumably green circuits. Yes, and green circuits, except we don't have any, as we've previously discussed, in order to make the yellow inserters that can be passed up here to make the green science. Exactly the same thing happening up here with the belts, where we've got lumber and wooden gears being brought in to make the wooden belts, and then being passed over here where it's mixed up with some iron gears that then allow us to make the yellow belts, which can be passed out here to make the science packs. Science packs then, exactly as you'd expect, they go down a belt, they go into a station down here. Lovely. We are currently trying to make all of the science packs at 1.5 per second, because that was a number we started up on when we had them being made on the bus system, and we've stuck with that for the time being. Now, in the slightly longer term, I think all of the basic sciences, so that's wood and steam and automation, logistics, chemical, production, probably utility as well, and I expect space, we're going to probably make those a bit faster, maybe at 3 per second, and then make all of the exotic ones, like metallurgic and all the weird ones that come from other planets, carry on making those at 1.5 per second. And that's because a lot of the more advanced researchers down here will use all of the basic ones, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the more advanced ones. So looking at this one, for example, science enriching uses a load of the basic ones, and then metallurgic and mineral. If we pick rocket turret, it uses a load of the basic ones, and then agricultural. Pressure laboratories use all the basic ones, and including space, and then electrochemical. So you see, many of the researchers will use a load of, either a load of, or sometimes all of the basic ones, going up to space science being the top of what I'm classing as basic in this context, and then a relatively small number of the more advanced ones. And so I think doing all the basic ones at a higher rate means that you can then sort of bounce back and forth between researchers later on. Now, there are a few of the very, very final ones, things like the research speed, which you get right at the end. This uses basically everything. And so at that point, when you end up doing loads and loads of these just to churn things through as fast as you possibly can, at that point, you may need to start producing some of the science packs a bit faster on some of the other planets. But at that point of the game, we'll have a very, very different factory setup and layout and priorities and so on. So I suspect that won't be a problem. But for the time being, yes, we're doing 1.5 per second of these ones. We're probably going to increase that, and increasing it is probably just going to be a case of doubling the number of machines in here, because all of these belts are easily capable of feeding in at certainly twice the rate they're going at the moment, and certainly significantly more. It's going to require a bit of re-spaghettiing the belts, but that's not going to be too difficult. And all of this is very, very expandable. I've made it in the standard sort of lining things up kind of way. So if I wanted to double this, I could just come along here and copy that and paste it in here. And then we would, as soon as everything gets built, we would have twice as much available there. This, once again, we can copy, paste it, double it like that. Down here, it's exactly the same sort of thing again. I can copy that. Paste it in again there. Okay, I'll need to fill in these belts like this, but that's not too much of an issue. Boom, 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 boom. And then I've doubled the production of all of these things. We can make the science then at 3 per second, which is what we're going to need to do fairly soon, as previously discussed. All of the designs are hopefully going to be designed like this, so they can be easily expanded. And this one, as long as the belts can keep up, we could make this up to many, many times as many per second. So we could fit in another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 along here. So we're multiplying this by 10 times from what we had originally, which is a massive expansion. I'm not sure I'll be able to get in quite so many of the green sciences, but if we took this, we could put in a 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's room in here to put in literally 10 times the rate of production. And whether the belts are going to be able to keep up, we would have to wait and see. We may need to get sort of special inserters and faster belts and so on, but it is theoretically possible to fit 10 times as much green science production into this city block just by dropping in more and more and more copies of it and then running the belts through. And all of the ones I've done have been designed with this sort of expansion in mind. Next up, I did grey science, also known as military, and this is another one that required the multiple inputs because it's a complicated science. It requires lots of different inputs when you're making things on site, and so that's bringing in crushed coal and iron in order to make grenades. It's bringing in iron and steel and copper and wood in order to make wooden ammo, to make yellow ammo, to make red ammo. Thank you, Lignumis. We're bringing in stone bricks to make walls. All of those get fed in down here and off to make the science packs. Functionally, this is more or less the same system as we had making the green sciences. We just need to do slightly different stirring of all the ingredients in the middle. This one I think would be a bit more of a struggle to multiply by a bajillion times in order to get much more throughput from here. There's probably room to double or triple it, but the ammunition production along here is a little bit iffy. The wood is a bit awkward. I guess we could run the wood round the bottom here and then use a red inserter or a pair of red inserters to bring it into an assembly machine over here. But then there's the iron as well, and yeah, it's a bit difficult and a bit fiddly, I think, to add that in. So this one I haven't designed quite as well as some of the others. It's going to be much harder to expand it if we wanted to. A better design might have been to have the wooden and the iron and ammunition being made on another row, and then it'd been easier to copy and paste it out like I did with some of the other ones. But still, it wouldn't be too difficult to expand it. It looks like I've made a mistake here with this ratio though, since only half of the red ammo assemblers seem to be running. I'll need to rebuild this to double the brown and yellow ammunition production next time so that they can produce enough to keep this running. And I think that's going to give me the excuse to do the rebuild that this area kind of needs. Also notable is that the red ammunition is being stolen here, taken off down a belt and put into a station. It's not even being put into a station, it's being fed directly onto the walls to keep all of the gun turrets armed. So, fine. I mean, we need ammunition going out there. I guess this is a reasonable way to do it. It looks a bit weird having a belt going all the way through the middle of the city block, but to be fair, we are fairly close to the edge here, so it's not too horrendous. It's only a little bit horrendous. And apparently Mark is to blame for that, and it's his planet, so I can't be too rude because he can do it however he likes. Making his engine units allowed us to make blue or chemical science. So this is again the same sort of general idea, bringing in the engine units and the sulfur and the red circuits, all of which are being made on separate city blocks around the rest of the factory, and then they're being merged onto belts along here, passed into the assembly machines, and they're being made into the chemical science packs. We're now getting into the really advanced science packs, or the really advanced for basic science packs, with purple science, which I've forgotten what it's actually called. Is it production science? There we go. And this one was built by Mike rather than me, and you can really see the difference in our styles here. Whereas where I've been going for sort of almost a bus-based system, he's gone for, I don't really know how to describe this. He's got all the sort of different sections being built in separate corners of the city block, which keeps things a little bit neater at the moment. So you've got all the rail stuff happening down here, including making the sticks for it. You've got the electric smelters down here. You've got the productivity modules up here. So yeah, that's all being done sort of fairly in its own self-contained area. I think this would be a little bit more effort to expand than mine would though. Now down here, these ones trivial. You just copy and paste this in upwards. This one, however, it's going to be a bit more fiddly. You're going to need to mess around with the belts quite a bit. So I think personally, I prefer my design. Although I will also happily admit that I am biased towards it, and therefore S1-E24, that's probably why I prefer it. But I'm sure we'll be able to expand this if we need to, possibly through speed modules and beacons if necessary, and also, if absolutely necessary, through the magic of just copy and pasting this block and putting it somewhere else. So this could certainly be expanded if necessary. But as with all of the other ones, well, he's done a slightly different drop-off design. He's done 2 things per station, which in a way makes more sense, because I think with some of my designs, I actually wasted it a little bit. There actually is an empty station over here, which could have been bringing in some of the resources. So I've got 6 things spread across 2 stations instead of 6 things spread across 3. So I think Mike's design is superior there, because he's going to have a better throughput and a bit more stockpiling available in the stations. So yeah, I'll give him that one. That's definitely slightly better than mine. It also means his belt spaghetti is slightly simpler, because he's only trying to get 2 different things out of each station instead of 3. So, you know, there's an advantage there too. Additionally, with the way he's split things off, I suppose it also means he's got less belts travelling around, because this station can feed the rail production, this station can feed the module production, and then this station, well, this one has to feed both of them, because you need steel in all kinds of places. But it is a little bit neater, so there's an advantage there as well. But this is, as I say, now still producing the standard 1.5 per second of the purple science, so that's working very nicely. Finally, we have yellow utility science. As you can probably tell by a glance by now, this one was made by me. So we've got the sort of lined up style of building. Once again, I've got 3 inputs coming in on each of these stations, and yes, we have a shortage of blue circuits by the looks of it. And up here we've got steel, batteries, and electric motors. So you can see all of the things I was talking about in the previous chapter, where we're building up lots of different intermediates. That's all to go into the science production. So down here, we're making the flying robot frames in order to allow us to then make the yellow science. We're also shipping out the flying robot frames over here, where they can then be taken off to the mall in order to build up more robots when we need them, which we inevitably will, I'm sure. Again, if this was actually running, this would produce 1.5 per second, but we've got a slight problem with an input of blue circuits over here, so it's not running at all at the moment. But once we sort that problem out, maybe by shipping them in from Lignumis, I'm sure everything will be lovely. All of these science packs are then being picked up by LTN trains and taken off to the science lab area. And this is something that Tristan's been building up, and this is massive. And we can see that it looks like a blue science train has been in here fairly recently and dropped off an enormous quantity of science packs. So those are being filtered in through through this weird system that Tristan has made up, and then being passed along here, sorted out, and then going down here. Okay, so this is actually a fairly standard sushi belt system that he's got working here, where we're having a steady stream of all of the science packs we've got so far being passed out this way, with loads and loads of logistic storage along here to hold as many of them as we need to. Then they're being fed along here, split onto both sides, and then same from here. So we can get 2 belts worth of science packs going around, being fed into all of these labs. At least all of the ones that are currently running. We have a shortage of productivity modules, so all of these ones have been turned off. And they're going around with a sort of standard sushi belt system until they all come back in here, where they get resorted and then pass back through into all of the different storage systems across the top here. And actually this gives us quite a nice graph telling us how much of each of the different science packs we've got. If you're down to no boxes, then there's clearly a problem happening, which is actually, to be fair, is none of the science packs we're actually trying to do at the moment. If you can see 1 box with them in, then we've got a quantity of them. We're not doing too badly. And if there's many boxes, like there is with the steam science and the space science, then things are going really well with that one, and we've got a really healthy supply. Basically, I think we've just got we've pretty much got shortages of all of the ones that require green circuits or above. So that's a bit of a sign of where our problems are lying in the rest of the factory. I don't know whether this system is going to be fast enough for bringing the science packs in. I guess we'll find out in time. But you know, at the moment, for now at least, it's working pretty well. And when we request a science to be done, like maybe beacons, we can see that it happens really quickly, because we have a huge number of labs and we have a good amount of science at the moment in order to keep them running. So that's really good. I approve of this rate of science doing, and it's going to only get faster in the future as we bring in more and more better modules to put into all of these labs. Tristan says that he quite deliberately hasn't fully activated the LTN system over here. He's been bringing in trains with relatively small amounts of science just to get things working. But you can see if we look over here, he's requesting 40,000 of every single science pack, which is kind of ridiculous. That's a lot of stuff to be bringing in, and it's going to keep the trains very busy, but we're going to need all those science packs, so why not? You'll also notice he's got this group thing here, and this is how he was requesting partial trains. So this is the request stack threshold. This tells the station when to request. Normally it'll request when it needs 160 stacks in order to get to this. If we tick here, then it'll activate this number as well, and that subtracts 150 from this one. So right now we're saying request when you only need 10. That doesn't seem to have triggered it again, so we do clearly still already have 10 stacks of every science pack, but that means he'll then start pulling in partial trains of only 10 stacks at a time, and that means it's much easier for the science production systems to get up to having that quantity of science available. So if we look over here, we currently have 26,000 available, which is 130 stacks. So there's actually plenty available of the wood science, but if we look at one of the more difficult ones, like purple science, we'll see that over here, we currently only have 3.7 thousand, which is about 19 stacks. So at this point, if it's set to request on 10 stacks, we would send a train over to get 10 of them, but if it's set to 160, we'd be waiting for more science packs to be produced, which aren't getting produced at the moment because we've got a shortage of red circuits at this point. And so that allows us to basically toggle between whether we want to let the system wait until we need a massive amount of science and then bring in an entire train load, which is obviously the most efficient way of doing it for as far as the train system is concerned, or whether we want to bring in small amounts just to get things started and up and running as we're sort of kickstarting it. Tristan says this is the full amount of space and steam science packs we require, so it's full up to 1, 2, 3, 4 and a little bit chests, which gives us sort of a chest and a half of buffer in case the numbers are a little bit out. That seems very sensible. Those are good numbers. I'm happy with that. But we've got good amounts of these two. Entertainingly, the ones that are being produced on other planets, because they weren't delayed by the switch over to city block production. All of those extraterrestrial or extra Norvian science packs are being brought in to the landing pad over here, which has currently had its currently had one of its inserters deactivated, and so they can be dropped into here. We're trying to keep 1,000 of each science pack in the drop-off system itself, and then we've got a signal coming down here from above, and that says for each signal that exists on the green side that is greater than 0 and on the red side greater than 0, then output that signal, one of it, into the filter on the inserter, and in other words, to tell it to unload that particular thing. And this is quite clever, because if you look along here, you'll see that we've got massive numbers of all of these science packs, because these are the ones that we don't have yet. We've not made electromagnetic, we've not made battlefield science, we've not made biofusion science, we've not even heard of biofusion science, but we've got massive numbers of those requested, because those are science packs we don't have. We've then got slightly smaller numbers of the Norvian science packs requested, because these are the ones we have at least some of, but not enough to satisfy the system. So if there were any of those available, they'd be unloaded. We then have negative numbers of the two that have come in from elsewhere, because we've got slightly more of those than we ideally want, but that's fine. We don't mind having slightly more, as long as it's not too much more. Then we can see down here, these are the two science packs that we actually have in the landing bay. And so if these match up with any positive numbers up here, then we'll unload them. So in this case, the steam science is 1,000, and the steam science here is -84. So we've got a positive and a negative, so we don't unload those. Here, similarly, we've got a positive number and a negative, so we don't unload those. Here, we've got a positive number and a 0, so we don't have any of those to unload, so we don't pass the signal through. And so that means we're not trying to unload anything at the moment. But if a load of the steam science packs got used up because we did another science, for example, then we'd be able to pull some out of here. They'd go up this belt, and that would feed them in here. They'd be filtered along here, and they go into the correct chests along here. So yeah, I think that's going to work really, really well. My only concern along here is going to be whether we've got enough throughput on this belt to unload the science packs that are coming in from the train system fast enough. Maybe this should be merged onto this belt down here, because then we get, well, actually then we wouldn't actually get a significantly higher throughput then at all. It's always going to be limited by the belt that goes, in fact, the invisible non-existent belt that goes between the right hand side of this splitter and the left hand input of this splitter, because that can only ever be one red belt's worth of speed. And so as they come through from here, this is most of a red belt, and we're dribbling through the rest to fill it up there. I don't know why he's not using both sides of it. Perhaps because the inserter here couldn't keep up. In fact, that seems quite likely, looking at the speed it's running at. So it's only passing through half of that. Yeah, as I say, it worries me a little bit, as when we get the whole system up and running at full speed, I'm slightly worried that this is going to be a bottleneck. We'll find out later, but for now, that's my only concern. And I think that's a pretty good point to end the video. I think I've now covered nearly all of the city block system we've got set up and running over here. The main bit that I've got left to talk about still is the mall system down here, and there's some interesting stuff going on down there, so I'm going to save that for a video sometime next week. So all that remains is to say thank you very much for watching. More videos will be coming out every Thursday and Friday, of course, as you're used to. And we'll be back on Monday with another stream at 7:30 PM UK time, where we'll be carrying on with all of this stuff, or more likely we'll be carrying on with Vulcanus by the time you see this video. There'll be another stream on Wednesday as well, where I should be playing some more Foundry, where I should be carrying on with science packs in a very, very similar sort of way, although without the trains, rather sadly. But yes, the same sort of idea, build up science packs, build up resources you can sell, all that sort of stuff, but there's a third dimension to play with, so I can make tunnels and bridges and stuff like that. All great fun. So yes, please subscribe to the channel, make sure you don't miss out on anything else that's happening on here, or come along on Twitch Twitch as well. Join the Discord if you'd like to chat with us. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.